Hello and welcome to Straightforward. This week we will be looking at events in Yemen, a major shift we have seen on the scene, where President Abed Rabbou Mansour Hadi is now in Aden. But how did this happen, and what is this telling us? What will his intentions be, and is the momentum he is gaining in his stronghold a start of a new chapter, at least in the near future of Yemen? Let me first welcome our guest here at the studio, Your Excellency former Yemeni Ambassador to Beirut, Dr. Al-Kubati, and Mr. David Lowley, British political commentator. Thank you very much and welcome back on the show. Now, for a bit of background, let's have a look at this brief report.
Yemen's deposed President Abed Rabbou Mansour Hadi sought to resume his duties as president as he convened a meeting of the governors of Yemen's 6 southern provinces in the economic hub of Aden on Sunday. After the meeting, the governor of Aden, Abdul Aziz bin Habtour, said that he and the other 5 governors had pledged their support for Hadi, who had resigned as president while under house arrest in the capital, Sana'a. The meeting came a day after Hadi arrived in Aden following his escape from house arrest, where he was being held by Shiite Houthi rebels who had seized control of the capital back in September. UN envoy Jamal bin Omar revealed on his Facebook page that in a phone conversation, President Hadi expressed reservations about continuing the current negotiations in Sana'a and requested they be transferred to a safe place to which the parties should agree. On Tuesday, an aide to Hadi said the Yemeni president had sent a letter withdrawing his resignation, which he tendered last month, but this was never ratified by parliament as legally required. In the letter, Hadi urged lawmakers to cooperate with him to salvage the salvageable and to normalise the security and economic situation in all provinces. Hadi also called on government ministers to head immediately to Aden to convene. Prime Minister Khalid Baha had tendered his resignation at the same time as Hadi, but he remains under house arrest in Sana'a along with other ministers and officials.
Dr. Kubati, let us start in reverse chronology today. Tell us about the most recent events in Yemen, and what can we learn from what has happened in the last 2 days?
Well, okay, I think if we go backwards, we've got to remember that there was a national dialogue conference which, lasted for about 10 months, and it finished around this time last year. And at the end of that conference, there was the outcomes, which was in a very important document, on which the new constitution should have been drafted. And it was actually, we had a draft of the constitution ready about 2 months ago. But obviously there were people who were against this new direction of the country, being modern, being federal and so on, especially the Houthis, Ali Abdullah Saleh, all traditional forces in Yemen. And we should remember that with the end of that conference, there was the UN Resolution Council 2140 passed under Chapter 7 of the Charter of the UN. And that was directed towards people who might derail the whole political settlement which was agreed on for the past 3 years.
Who are those people who might derail it?
Well, we should know that the revolution of February 2011 was against the former so-called traditional forces. Ali Abdullah Saleh, the former president who ruled for nearly more than 30 years, and there are the other traditional forces which have ruled North Yemen for a long time. And who have waged a war in 1994 against the South, and we in the South feel that we have been somehow sidelined. So these are the forces but unfortunately the GCC initiative, which planned the outcome of the whole setup, did not actually remove the strong people. There were 3 forces which were strong. There was President Ali Abdullah Saleh and his nephews and sons. And there was Ali Muhsin Al-Ahmar, the general who was, the strong general who left Ali, defected from the old regime. And there was the Al-Ahmar tribe leaders, sheikhs of Al-Ahmars. Those are the 3 parties. Now, 2 of them were left the country, and we remained with the most mischievous and the master of all mischief, Mr. Saleh, who managed now to get the Houthis, whom he had fought 5 or 6 wars. He has waged 6 wars against them. Now he's siding with them. A coalition has been built. He's using them, and this is actually to reinvent the whole old system. The President Hadi, was an interim president, but obviously he was now put under arrest in Sana'a, and he managed to escape now 5 days ago, and this had turned the whole events in a different direction completely. Now the president, as your report has said, he's now in Aden, and it looks as if the Houthis, who have managed to turn hall events, and a coup actually has happened since the 21st of September. Now are the strong forces on the ground, but only strong, you could say, in one of the 6 regions which should have formed the federal Yemen. So they are controlling the capital and the areas of the northern highlands. But the rest of the country, 80% of the country, is not under their control. And you could say as well, their constituency wouldn't be more than 15% of the population.
Mr. Lowley, Ban Ki-moon has warned the international community of the severe ramifications if Yemen falls into complete chaos.
Yes.
Now, tell us about what you would believe are one of these ramifications.
Well, Al-Qaeda have had control down in southern Yemen. Aden is known to be one of the poorest Muslim country in existence, and southern Yemen fell into the hands, a couple of towns down there have fallen into the hands of Al-Qaeda for the last, since the revolution, more or less. So it's actually, it's interesting how the Houthis have sort of done the Americans and the international community a bit of a favour, because there's always been a bit of a north-south divide and a war that's been going on between the north and the south. So now there's this it would turn into an almost civil war. So I suppose that's what Ban Ki-moon is suggesting. But go on, yes.
Do you think President Hadi will or might take advantage of Al-Qaeda's presence so as to undermine the Houthis, because we do know that they are opponents?
Well, that's interesting. I don't think so, actually. I think that he's probably got enough supporters amongst the in the military of the original guard to be able to take them on himself, and that he'll probably get some sort of support from outside, I would have thought now. I think it's fantastic, or very interesting. But didn't the Houthis, I'd like to ask from our ambassador, weren't the Houthis once didn't they govern the whole of the country back in history many years before?
Yes, if Houthis, you could say, that come from Sayyids or Hashemites.
Yes.
And for 1,000 years, yes, they were there. This is the imamate sort of rule which ruled northern Yemen for a long time, but which stopped in 1962. But I think Carl has brought a very important point there.
Yes.
I think if we look at what's happening in Syria, where now the Americans, the GCC, and the Turks are intending to train the moderate, opposition. I think the world would do itself favor if they would help Hadi to train his, team, especially the old southern, army of South Yemen.
Yes.
And then it could, as it is planned back in Syria, so you have a moderate opposing both Al-Assad and opposing at the same time Daesh, then you will have a force which could oppose both the Houthis and the Qaeda, because the Houthis, as you have mentioned, they're trying to present themselves as if they're going to fight, Al-Qaeda.
Yes.
And this is quite dangerous, as you say. It's going to be a Shia-Sunni conflict, which is not actually a real conflict in Yemen.
Yes.
But if Hadi is being sided, and he can get a build of a good army and trained and so on with the help of the GCC, then he will manage to oppose both sides, hit the Houthis and at the same time face Al-Qaeda, which is quite a very real danger in the south.
Yes, do you think the Americans, they will want to let it happen? I think that it's almost in America's interests to watch it happen, sit back and let them take on the Al-Qaeda for them,
Well, speaking of opportunity, Your Excellency, what, in your opinion, is the strongest card that President Hadi can play now?
I think his strongest card is again the south. Let's not forget that the South Yemen at one time was, at loggerheads with North Yemen, because South was with the Soviets and North was at one time with the West. But on 2 previous wars, in 1972 and in 1979, it was all the time the Southern Army which had the upper hand. Even in the war of 1994, it looked to be North against South, again it was the South defeating the South, because the forces which actually defeated the Southerners were led by Abed Rabbou Mansour, who was part of the South. So his strongest card, again, is the old army of South Yemen, which was quite an elite and a very good army, trained previously first by the British and then by the Eastern Bloc at that time.
Yeah. Dr. Kubati, the fact that President Hadi and his government were not replaced while he was under house arrest, they were not replaced by any form of authority by the Houthis. Could this be an indication that the Houthis might be more inclined to rule from back seats?
At one time we thought that, they wanted actually to use, Abed Rabbou Mansour and to be, as you say, backseat drivers. But I think the president at the end just refused.
By resigning, mostly.
Yes, by resigning. He just put him. He said no, because they wanted him to appoint, even a vice president who would be representing them. And I think that brought things just to the clash, and he resigned.
And the one thing the Houthis now have, of course, is finance. If the rumours are true that Ali Abdullah Saleh is now behind them, he's supposed to have absconded with between 30 and 60 billion of a year's GDP of the country's wealth. So if they now have the money, they can see they probably see possibilities of taking the country over, internally.
But I don't think Ali Abdullah Saleh will give them that money at all.
No, that's true. That's why it's a very fascinating situation.
David Lowley, what are the developments in Yemen? Recent developments. What are they telling policymakers, do you think, in the UK? How is Westminster looking at this?
Well, I don't know about Westminster or America, but they must look at this and think that there's another country that's fallen prey to, they've been sending drones in there, bombing innocent people in the south. They haven't backed it up. There's no UN, the United Nations haven't gone in there. Again, it's another country that the United Nations haven't gone in to sort out, and it's been left to fall into its own quagmire of possible civil war. So they've got to relook. I think the whole world has to relook, or the United Nations has to relook at how the world deals with this continual problem of terrorists, insurgents, Al-Qaeda, which is spreading throughout the whole of the North Africa, MENA region, and so on. It's not just a problem in Yemen. It's a problem in the whole region.
Your Excellency, what would you have to say to that?
Just to very quickly, go back to the previous, when you say what's the strongest guy, I think the world has got, I know Abed Rabbou Mansour Hadi has pinned his hope on the international community, on the GCC and so on. They have let him down.
He's a US ally as well.
Yes. They have let him down. I think they treated him with what could be by an approach of a perfidious Albion, just left him.
Why would they do that?
Do you think they were surprised by the Houthis' quick upsurge? It came very quickly. It came within 2 or 3 months. All of a sudden, they'd taken Sana'a.
It was Ali Abdullah Saleh. The Houthis are just, they're at a different stage. But it's Ali Abdullah Saleh forces. It's, you have got to remember that 80% of the previous, presidential guards were Houthis, were Zaydis, and they were. And now, even last night, they were just siding with Ali Abdullah Saleh.
Yes.
But again, back to the question you asked at the last minute, I think again here the world, the international players as well as the regional players have got to understand that the situation is quite grave, and if they face a similar sort of situation like Somalia, then I think the West will lose a lot, because don't forget that Yemen is overlooking the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, and through there at least daily pass 4 million barrels of oil every day. Yes. And if Iran manages to get its hand over there, then I think the Iranians will be, getting their hands back to try and raise the price of oils, because that's what they have been affected. The Iranians and the Russians are against Saudi Arabia because they felt that the price of oils, the Saudis were involved in this bringing down of the price of oil. So again, the clash there has got an economical aspect in it.
And now we are joined by Mr. Abdul Naqib. Welcome to our discussion. Head of the Political Secretariat at the Southern Democratic Assembly. Taj, welcome to the show. Could we see President Hadi's comeback in Yemen as a game changer? Mr. Naqib.
Yes. I think it is a game, yes, but it is not a local game. It is, regional, an international game.
Yes.
I think when they, let him to go from Sana'a to Aden, they want to, to start a new era in the conflict within the Yemen, in the south and in the north. And I believe now they are preparing for a war between Shia and Sunnah. It is exactly the same scenario as we see it in Syria or in Iraq. It is exactly the same producer and the same plot everywhere, as they want it now to be in Libya. They want actually to reshape the area with new states only on factionals and sectarial and tribal governorates or states in the area to be able to be managed properly or easily by those are the Western or the influential countries or the influential states. You know, it is crucial and it is important, their interest in this area, and they don't want to have any trouble and any problem. They want to manage it easily. But I think it is difficult now to sort. Instead, to find a solution within, you know, the conflict, to sort out the conflict within Sana'a itself. When they let the president Abed Rabbou Mansour Hadi to go to Aden, they make it more difficult and more complicated. It is not easy to think that you are going to get rid of Al-Houthis. The Al-Houthis, they are not a party, they are not a current, they are a people. They are people living in this area, and this tendency, or this is a religion, you know, current. It is lasting for more than 1,200, around that, or 1,100 years.
Yes.
So they can't get rid of them. They should think. And I advise and I believe they have to take this advice seriously. These states in the Gulf states or Saudi Arabia, they should consider how to normalize the situation and to deal with the Houthis properly as a people who are exist in this area, and they are not a party, they are not something, you know, exported or imported from anywhere. They are, you know, original people living in this area, and they got their current for long time, long centuries. Yeah, so it's the best, and for the entire area and the whole area I'm talking about in the Gulf states and Yemen itself, just to normalize and to deal with the fact that those people are Zaydis, and despite the fact there is some conflict between them, from Al-Islah, for example, Hamid and Sheikh Al-Ahmar, the family of Al-Ahmar, or Ali Abdullah Saleh, but at the end, they are, all of them are Zaydis. They are not going to lose the big battle, you know, for them, for their, you know, existence.
Thank you. We've got here Dr. Muhammad Al-Qubati also at the studio, and he would like to engage with you, so feel free to address him as well.
I agree with what Abdu has said. You know, I mean, we have to you know, take into consideration that, yes, I agree, they are, you know, they represent, they've got a constituency, as I have mentioned previously, of at least 15 or 20% of the country. So they have got to take share in the whole. But the question is, would they be allowed to be the rulers as they continued for 1,000 years, especially in the north? Will they be the only people who are calling the shots? That's, I think, the conflict. Because we were in the National Dialogue Conference, and they took part in it, and we agreed on a federal state, and they had, you know, a region, or perhaps they didn't like one region, they want another region beside it. That should be on the table for that, within a dialogue which people could accept each other, not without, you know, marginalizing anybody. I agree with what he says, especially in that point. We have got to take them on board and get them engaged.
Mr. Anakib, what does this tell us about, what does this tell the West about President Abed Rabbou Mansour Hadi, specifically after the last 2 days and what happened?
I'm not sure exactly, but we see that the Gulf states, they are pressurized, and they call the international community to support Abed Rabbou Mansour Hadi. I don't know how he is going to get this support without any institutions, without parliament, without state, you know, without government, without parliament, without any institutions. So as far as we know, that the South already destroyed, you know, the people who defeated us in 1994, who invaded us in 1994, mainly, you know, the ruler party, which is the National Congress of Ali Abdullah Saleh, with the alliance who are the, you know, the terrorists, or those are the extremists from the Islah, or from the Afghan Arab who came from Afghanistan back at that moment. They invaded the South, and they destroyed everything. Actually, they turned the South as a village. If Abed Rabbou is going now to rule from Aden, he has nothing to use as a tools how to bring the, you know, the government or the state back on board. There is a vacuum now, a political vacuum and a security vacuum and everything. Not we talk about the expected and difficult economical situation. Mainly, this is the main, factor which the Gulf state they are going to use it against the Al-Houthis, who is the main ruler now, or the actual ruler in Yemen. And they believe that they are going to, to defeat them by this way. I believe not, that because they got support, regional support or international support as well. It's the same situation as in Syria. So it is not easy. That means we are calling for a war between the south and the north, mainly between the Shia and the Sunni, because now they are starting to mobilize to bring the terrorists from Turkey on a daily basis, every day, 3 times a week. Just aeroplane came from Ankara straight away, or from Istanbul to Aden, and we don't know who are they. Those people, strange people. Actually, they are preparing to declare Emirates in the south for those who are extremists, as similar as it was now in Raqqa, in Syria, or in Iraq, in North Iraq.
Yes, and at the Southern Democratic Assembly, Taj, what is next on your agenda when it comes to these recent developments in Yemen?
Actually, we declared in January, last January, front, which we called it the Al-Hay'a Al-Watani, or the National Board, the Southern National Board, which is a life force in a group of parties, which is the Southern Democratic Assembly and the Son of the South Arabia, and another main groups from the Southern movements. We came together, and we will now we are watching Abed Rabbou Mansour Hadi, what he is going to do. If he is going to bring those who are those terrorists, as we heard that Al-Ahmar, some of Al-Ahmar brothers, maybe Hamid and Ali Mahsen, they are already in the south. This is a big disaster, and we are not going to keep silent. We are going to, there is no mean now to say it is peaceful, because there is no government and there is no law. There is no one is predominated to obey and to say that we are calling for our rights peacefully, because now in every area actually everyone is managing itself or himself, like in Al-Bayda, like in Marib, like in Hadramaut, in Shabwa, and in Aden, and everywhere, in Taiz, everywhere. There is no main ruler which is, you could say, manage the whole country, because it is already divided, and it is not only south and north. It is divided to many fractions. Now, this is a fact. So I believe Al-Hirak, or the Southern movement, is ready now, to fight and to declare the armed struggle in case of we see those people coming from Turkey, or those who fled Sana'a to Turkey, like Al-Hamid Ahmar and others. And
what do you think, Mr. Al-Naqib, what do you think of about the GCC initiative asking for military intervention in Yemen, vis-à-vis one key element of the National Security Council Resolution 2201, which emphasized the return to the GCC initiative and the National Dialogue Conference outcomes as the legal foundations of Yemen's transitional period?
This is just something useless to talk about the Gulf initiative.
Why would you say so?
Because no one talk about it, only those just for the media, because no one already hold it, because many also agreements after that, which is another agreement, which is conducted by Al-Houthis and others, parties, other groups, and now it is gone as well. So they should now consider the reality and what is now on the ground. They should bring those who are on these elements on the ground to deal with it properly. Because if you talk about the Gulf initiative, so who are the parties who are which are going to deal with it? Actually, in the south, we didn't recognize it at all. We were not involved in it, because it is going to just only to create more problems and to bring more problems instead to solve them. The more serious now, that is the division, or the Gulf state, they are dividing among each other, among themselves. So the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait and Oman, they have different position and different attitudes towards the whole the new developments. But the Saudi Arabia, I think they are supporting now mainly the Muslim Brotherhood. Yes. As we saw them, they called some of the leaders of the Yemeni Muslim Brotherhood, they called them and they met them in Riyadh, which is a bad sign for us. And we are not, and I think they thought to bring them in the south, and from the south they are going to support them and to boycott in the Houthis in the north and to support those who are in the south. But we are not going to accept this deal by any means. If they are going to fight, they could fight there.
Yes, Mr. Al-Naqib, stay with us. I think Dr. Kubati has something to say. I saw him
Yes, I mean, we have got to understand the whole politics and real politics of the area now. I mean, Mr. Zayani is today, who is the Secretary General of the GCC, he's today in Aden and he's meeting President Hadi, and they are already showing siding with him. So I think the Southerners, we in the South have got to have some sort of ability to coalesce so that we arrange ourselves and stand as together as one party. This is our chance, so as to show that these northern people, the northern forces which has invaded the south, are not actually interested in building a democratic and federal state. So that's a chance for the Southerners, instead of trying to look now and split between the southern groups themselves.
The allies of the south, the west, will never, in a million years, they do not ever want to see Aden fall into the hands of the Iranian-backed Houthis. They'll plough all sorts of weapons in there. It's another opportunity for America and Britain's, sadly, biggest industry of arms trading to get involved in selling more arms. I think they'll allow a war to start there now, and I think there will be a war, sadly, in Yemen, which we're about to see a big war, which will carry on with Ali Abdullah Saleh financing the north and the west and the Gulf states financing the south, which is a terrible thing to say, but it's the way it's looking.
Abdul Naqib, what's your final say before you leave us today?
Just bring for peace, and bring, we don't want to be another Syria or another Iraq. We want to solve the problems amongst ourselves, because despite the fact we are so disappointed and frustrated as a Southerners, because what happened to us, how they oppressed us for 2 decades, more than 2 decades, and how they looted everything from the south, how they deprived us, how they discriminated us. But again, we don't want that to happen to the people in the north or in the south, to be as refugees, as what happened millions in Syria. I believe the disaster, it will be more aggressive and more, widened than it will be in Syria. And we am warning the Gulf states that the disaster, it is not going to be only in the south or in Yemen. I believe it will be,
nationwide.
For the whole area. And
hopefully not. Mr. Abdou Al-Naqib, head of the political secretariat at the Southern Democratic Assembly, Taj, many thanks for taking a remarkable part in our discussion today. Thank you. Dr. Kubati, so what are the options now for the Houthis if they couldn't secure a house arrest? How will they prove good to control a country?
I think now, as we have followed the news last night, they're trying to control the main, regiments of the previous, groups which sided with Ali Abdullah Saleh. There was a fast last night for the elite forces, security within the army. But I think they have got a very difficult task now, if they're going, because once they move into areas where they have no any constituency, it will be quite difficult, and then it will be just very, very sort of factional and sectarian war between Zaydis and Sunnis, which we in Yemen have never faced before. But I think
do you think it's been instigated or induced from outside, around the borders, or even internationally?
I think the Iranians were very clever, They wanted somebody there to help them so that they could pressurize, the Saudis, get a card, just the same way as they had in
But then
Lebanon.
why is the GCC not helping President Hadi on this occasion if it benefits them to undermine the Iranian influence in Yemen?
That's a very good question. I think at one time they lapsed, and they missed that opportunity. I think they have got now. Abed Rabbou Hadi has opened a second opportunity by them when he managed to fly from Sana'a towards Aden, and that's why we can see now they are moving. Hopefully this movement is not too little and too late, but I think they have got a chance in their hand if they want really to rectify the whole situation and to really sort of safeguard their back garden. Then this is the chance for them, because the south is, as southern Yemen, it is the 2/3 of the country. It's mostly the one related to the Gulf. And at one time, as I've said, the Southern Army, if they could side with the South, then there is a possibility of building an elite army which could really face the whole situation, as I said, face both Al-Qaeda and the Houthis.
David Lowley, the fact that the President Hadi can control or claim loyalty from very little of Yemen's military is viewed to be a worrisome fact. Do you think there should be any support for the military from neighboring countries or even the West?
I think there will be, actually. I think, as I said earlier, I think that there's no way that the West, America particularly, will want to see Aden, which is one of the most important ports where the oil comes in and out, the ships come in and out all the time. They'll never want to see that go to their erstwhile enemy, the Iranians, who are supporting the Houthis in the north. The Houthis, however, nobody seems to be talking about bringing the Houthis to the table to talk about and have discussions. What should be going on is someone should be going through either GCC or the Arab League and just having to bring the Mansour Hadi to the table with the Houthi leaders. They could never bring back Ali Abdullah Saleh. He's the problem. How do we get rid of Ali Abdullah Saleh? He murdered too many of his own people back in the revolution of 2011, so the people will never allow him to come back. They would revolt against him. But he said in the last few days there's not a child been born that will ever get him to leave his own country. So he's the problem, the former president, in my opinion. But I don't understand why we're on it looks like we're on another collision course to a Sunni Zaidi Shia war. Without anyone talking about going to the negotiation table.
But that's what Jamal bin Umar had been trying,
Yes.
But unfortunately, you see, you need a sort of an even ground for that sort of dialogue to go on.
Yes.
The Houthis are insisting to have that dialogue in Sana'a under, duress, and that's the whole problem with Jamal bin Umar, the representative or the envoy for the UN Secretary General. He's facing that problem, but I think he's having a very difficult problem because he's trying to solve that dialogue within Sana'a under duress, where the rest of the other parties say that this is not a sort of a real even ground for everybody to get engaged in that sort of talk. We have been asking, hopefully the GCC, through the good offices of the West, could manage to bring all these forces together. Similarly, just like when they brought the Lebanese in Doha,
yes,
some 10 years ago, 8 years ago,
yes,
or when they brought them to Taif some 25 years
90s,
ago.
Yes, 89, 1989.
Yes.
Now, Your Excellency, some argue that former President Saleh is a key element in the trouble in the post-revolution Yemen, and he is ready to seize any opportunity to rise again and avenge himself. So, just as David touched on the former president, do you agree?
I agree, but I think the Houthis would like to see themselves there. You see, this is fighting for Zaidi demographics.
Yes. Right.
Ali Abdullah Saleh claimed all the time to represent the Zaidis. But because he is not a Hashemite,
yes,
then the Houthis feel that there should be the real representative of these demographics.
Could they
so
not
now they're competing. Yes,
but could they not be represented in the government similar to Hezbollah in Lebanon? They are part of the government.
Yes, they have been offered. They have been offered.
Why would they not take it?
They wanted a bigger, share of the pie. This is the problem. How much would they be given? When we came to redivide the whole country administratively, and we said we're going to have 6 regions, federal regions, that's the biggest stumbling point, which at one time in the National Dialogue Conference, they didn't want. They said, you're giving us only 1 area out of 6. And I thought, perhaps you could increase that area or give them 2 areas out of 6. So they could fill. But I think now they got very much greedy. They thought that they have got the upper hand and they're calling the shots, so nobody, it's again trying to take everything. Winner takes all is not a game in Yemen, as it is in Lebanon. In Lebanon, nobody can win everything there.
No. And one of the cards that President Hadi has now in his hand is that he can divert all state revenue from oil and taxes to the central bank in Aden. Now, do you think that would be a successful step in undermining the Houthis' seizure of power?
I think that's what the Houthis are actually worried about. If you remember, the gas and oil is in Ma'rib, and in Shabwa and in Hadramaut. All those three governorates are outside their control. And that's why one of the biggest confrontations we're expecting is the confrontation trying to really take over Ma'rib, which is the area for gas and oil. But they haven't yet, and the tribes in Ma'rib are ready for that. And that's going to be quite a nasty confrontation, because the Houthis are saying Ma'rib is under the control of Al-Qaeda, and that's not true. So I think yes, but let's not forget that a lot of the money which used to come into the government's coffers used to come from the GCC. At least nearly 30 to 40% of the budget is coming from aid from the GCC, and that's going to go to Aden now. Obviously, with the Gulf helping President Hadi, and President Hadi being in charge of 2/3 of the country. I think yes, one of his strong cards is the money and the budget he's going to get from the.
Yes.
Unlike the Iranians, who cannot really now be the paymasters with the economical situation and financial situation now in Iran.
Arguably. And from New York City, we are now joined by Ibrahim Al-Qatabi. Thank you very much for being on the show. Ibrahim, President Hadi considered political measures adopted by the Houthis since January the 21st to be unconstitutional. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's from September. So basically, he did the right thing because whatever that took place between September 21st up to Hadi fleeing the capital is unconstitutional. It was done through, using force and violence by Houthi militia, and so they don't have any legal or constitutional basis. They done through the use of force, like I said. Force and violence, and so Hadi did the right thing, and I think it is time now to look forward and to the future. Hadi now is in the other capital, Aden, and I think we started to see in how the shift of power, which is supposed to be done this way since 1990, where we should have had a decentralized government in Yemen, but everything was centralized on Sana'a, and even almost everything you can think of, from obtaining one's passport to going to the hospital to even flying out of the country, you have to go through Sana'a. They centralize almost everything on Sana'a. And so the fight today that a Houthi is leading, it's not a Houthi by themselves. Yes. It's Saleh himself, Houthi, and also the northern part of Yemen. We have a historical issue in Yemen, which is the northern part of Yemen always trying to maintain control over power, over the natural resources. Yes. And the fight that we see today is mainly that. They just want to maintain that power and keep it in different parts of the country, and leaving the rest of the country with basically nothing. And so I think now, since we have Hadi and the capital of the south, Aden, I think everyone should be headed there, or they should move the discussion to either Aden or Taiz, away from the militias, of political parties, of tribes, of Houthi sectarian groups. I think we need a different place on Sana'a. I think Sana'a's time should be up by now, and we should look into the future by thinking of the outcome of the national dialogue, the new constitution, decentralizing power. I think the real problem in Yemen is centralizing the power in one place with the hand of a few corrupt officials and a few families. And you can see it today when al-Houthi took over the capital, they started appointing members from the same sectarian group, from the same families.
Yes.
And that's what they're trying to do. And I think we have a country of 25 million people. And then I think different regions should have some autonomy over their natural resources, over governing their own selves. And that's what democracy and federalism is all about.
And just as you touched on the constitution, do you think the Houthis of Yemen in this next stage, do you think they will even consider abiding by the constitution?
Look, Houthi, let's have the real definition here. Basically, using force and violence is a definition of terrorism. So I don't think al-Houthis, they don't even want to declare themselves as a political group. Any group that uses force and violence to gain power is not a political party, is a militia, is a terrorist group. And I think that's the real descriptions of al-Houthis. So they have no legal justification. There is no time in the world where a militia that is basically working outside the scope of law should be considered anything than illegal militia. And they're given a chance. I think the Houthi is given an excellent chance. They were given by the National Dialogue, for example, a number, I don't know, about 50 individuals, 50 seats in the 500, National Dialogue seats, where they basically were given even a number greater than their own, than the representation they have in Yemen. They represent only one sectarian group, certain families, and a minority. They should not have any. They should have a say. They should be part of any political.
Yes, stay with us, Abraham. David Lowley here at
No, I was just going to say,
engage.
Abraham, even though they have used military force to take their position in Sana'a, you have to recognise that, as the doctor was saying, for thousands of years they were in control of the country, and they do have 25% of the population.
Look, I think we should not be thinking about who was in control 1,000 years ago. We're talking about 2015. We're talking about democracy. We're talking about equal citizenship. We're talking about access to services. We're not talking about the dark ages here.
No,
and
but they are 20% of the population, and they do have the control of this capital city at the moment.
Say that again?
They are 25% of the population, and they do have control of the capital city, or what was the capital city.
I think we need to distinguish here between the Zaydis and between the Houthis. Not all Zaydis are Houthis, and not all Houthis are just that part of Hashimis and everyone else. So we can't say that a Houthi represents the Zaydis. There are a lot of other Zaydis and non-Houthis from the same sectarian group don't want the Houthis to represent them. So we're not talking about Hezbollah here, where all Shia fall under the Hezbollah.
Well, maybe not all, though. Maybe a majority in Lebanon, definitely.
That's a valid point.
They still work together.
Yes.
But that's not the case in Yemen. Look, Ali Abdullah Saleh is a Zaydi.
Yes.
There were people who basically against al-Houthis a Zaydi. Some of the people that actually were part of the 1962 revolution against the Imams were from Zaydi and Hashimis. So we can't really say that now al-Houthi represent all the Zaydis. I think that's misleading information, and I think is incorrect. So and we're not talking. Look, we're talking about a new civilized system in Yemen. We're talking about a democracy, and a democracy, religion and sectarian should not have a role in the political life.
Mr. Hadi's political intentions have so far favored unification in Yemen. Do you think they will continue in that direction?
Say that again, I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
I was saying President Hadi's intentions were more in favor of unification in Yemen. Do you think they will continue in that direction now?
I think it's very much clear and that Hadi wants unification, and I think the vast majority of Yemen, unification is just a way to control the country and put it together. But what we need here, people need services. They need local governors. They need a say over their own lives. I think we shouldn't be, unity should not be the goal here. Unity should be just a way that people come together, but not to give someone leverage or power over someone else using that. Unification, in my opinion, should not be just the consolidation of a land. It should be bringing people together, a share of power, having everyone come in the same, having a say at the table. So I think, I mean, everything is possible in Yemen. But if the northern groups, Saleh and al-Houthis, continue to take overs and military bases and use that and head toward the south, all scenarios out of the table. We could see the south walking away from the north. We could see not even the south this time. I mean, Hadramis won their own autonomy. People in Marib and Shabwa and Al-Jawf.
Yes, stay with us, Ibrahim. Dr. Kubati will interject now.
Yes, I think, just taking to come in between Ibrahim and David, we had this, far-reaching political engagement through the National Dialogue Conference, and the Houthis were there, as Ibrahim have said. But unfortunately, they were asking and they're trying to get more than their share. And this is the problem. They were given chances there, and still they should be given chances to be part of the whole political settlement. It's just because of the game which was played by the previous regime. The previous regime was trying to reinvent itself through al-Houthis. And trying to, depict themselves as, they are new revolutionaries and they want to build an uncorrupt state and so on. But obviously they are part of the corrupt previous system. So now I think people have got to go back to the discussion table and try and fix a way forward where everybody has given his part and his share, so that the country can be as it was planned through the National Dialogue Conference, to have a democratic federal Yemen, which is built on civic values and the rule of law.
And I just want, if you allow me to jump in, just to add one more comment. I think the problem is the way they kind of share in power right now. That shouldn't be done. I mean, everyone should be brought into the table. But after the Constitution, we should have election, and not just to divide the country between different groups that sometimes don't even represent the people they claim to represent. I think if we talking about a federal system and we talking about democracy, we should wait until we have election. We should have the drafted constitution out there for people to vote, and then take it from there. There is a difference between having one group control the power, but also allowing everyone else to be treated as equal citizens here. The problem is that every group that wants to take over want to basically eliminate everyone else, and I think that's a real problem.
Yes.
I think.
Meanwhile, Mr. Al-Qa'tabi, the U.S. seems to be getting to something with Iran. How is this going to reflect on the Houthis, and do you think there will be any gains there for them?
I think is the wrong way to some trying to leverage the.
What's
Yemeni,
the right way to see it?
Well, we have a different scenario in Yemen than Russia. I think the American policy in Yemen completely failed. I don't think they know what they're doing in Yemen. I think that and they only seen Yemen through the lens of terrorism and drones, and I think that's the wrong approach, and that actually weakened President Hadi when he gave them a blanket check to use drones and basically involved on so many different things in Yemen, and thus actually gave al-Houthi and Hadi's opponents to go against Hadi as a puppet for the West. But I think Yemen is different than Syria in so many different ways. Yemen is not next to Israel. I mean, next to Israel as Syria. So Houthis are not Hezbollah here, and also Houthis are not the Syrian regime with a complete trained military. So it's a different story. And not all Zaydis are Houthis. and not everyone agreeing. I mean, there is a major protest inside Sana'a today, and that's very much clear across the country. So I think what's happening right now is that today, if you've seen, the Houthi took over the special forces inside Sana'a, special forces base, and also and they did the same thing in Hodeidah. What they're trying to do, along with Saleh, is to take over the military in the entire north, and then tell the international community, here, we're so powerful, you're not going to be able to dismantle us. So basically, we have a full say here, and we should, again, gain power. And I think what they're trying to do here is a number of things. They're trying to run away from accountability. As you know, the UN report yesterday, a few days ago, talked about Saleh having $60 billion. And he should be held accountable here, but also not only a freeze of assets and travel ban, but also be transferred to the international criminal justice system. The problem in Yemen is given dictators and given corrupt official immunity without accountability. I don't think Yemen will go anywhere. We're gonna go in the same circle again and again and again. And I think what's happening in the north right now is corrupt officials with access to almost all kind of powers, from money to military, trying to steer us in a different direction. I think Yemen very much have a clear
former lead
map.
advisor on UN Secretary General's high-level panel on post-2015 development, joined us from New York City. Thank you very much for taking part.
And thanks for having me.
And Dr. Kubati, what's your final say?
I think the final say is the international community and the regional players have got really to look at this now freshly and come out with a developed sort of GCC initiative to try and sort out the whole situation before it falls out of the hands of everybody.
Despite this discussion being really interesting, I guess we'll have to leave it there today due to time constraints. Let me thank our guests here at the studio, Dr. Mohammed Kubati, also political activist and vice chairman of the Southern Civil Democratic Rally, and David Lowley-Wakeland, documentary filmmaker and controversially accused former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair of war crimes. And our other interlocutors who joined us from New York City, Ibrahim Al-Ka'tabi at the Centre for Constitutional Rights, and from England, Abdul Naqib, head of the political secretary of the Southern Democratic Assembly, TAJ. And special thanks also to our technical team here at Levant TV for their efforts to put this show together. I shall end today by a brief conclusion from Dania Greenfield published. She argues if the Houthis are now the real power brokers, the US will have few allies to rely on for security cooperation, fewer intelligence assets, and fierce resistance to US drone strikes on Yemeni soil. At present, the Houthis are sailing high, riding on their alliance with Mr. Saleh and his loyalists in the military and their alleged financial and ideological backing from Iran. President Hadi might be able to prompt a public outcry for his return, but that would be a far stretch for someone who lacks broad support. This may not qualify technically as a coup, but the result may be the same, and the Houthis are unlikely to stop until they have full control, at least over the north of the country. And unless external events shift the course or alliances erode, we should expect to see Houthis calling the shots for some time to come. I'll leave it there today and stay tuned, and we'll be with you again soon on Straightforward.